typically whenever I've had a surgery, to me, when you're put under, it's like you're out, a second goes by, and then boom, you're awake. And then you're in a recovery room. You have no memory of any time lapse or having a surgery at all. And that's what I was expecting, but that's not what happened. So while I was under, the next conscious thing that happened is all of a sudden I was awake. And this was the weirdest thing, Jeff, because once I was awake, I was expecting, because I didn't forget that I had a surgery. But as I looked around, I said, this is not a recovery room. And I could not move. I could just move my eyes, but I could not move any part of my body. It was like my entire body was made out of cement. I couldn't even wiggle my toes. But I was laying in a very wide hospital bed, exactly like what you would have in ICU. When you're in ICU, a lot of people that have never been in ICU don't know that those beds are of a different size. They're much wider than a typical hospital bed. And so I was in a bed like an ICU bed, an extra wide bed, and it was pure white. And I had a pure white blanket and I'm laying on my back and I'm looking down my body as I'm laying on my back with my head on a pillow, and the blanket went up and over my feet and then just draped down from there. And I'm laying in this bed and I can't move, but I can move my eyes, and I'm just looking around. And to give you a perfect example, I know a lot of people, when they explain a near-death experience, they struggle for words or examples. But in my case, I got a perfect example. If you want to know what the whiteness looked like, it's the background to, like, if you pull up Google, or if you pull up YouTube, if you look at a website and you just imagine everything wiped off that website and it's just that white illuminated background on the computer screen, that is identical to what it was. It was, when you look at a computer screen, it's illuminated, it's lit, but you can't see the lights behind the screen. You don't see what's behind the screen of the computer that lights it like it does. And that's what the walls were like. The floor was like, the ceiling, everything was like a computer screen lit that solid white, but it was actually lit like a computer screen. And so there was like no source of where the light was coming from. It wasn't like left or right, top or what. It was encased the room. The room was the light. And so I'm laying in this bed on my back, and I'm looking straight down my body, and I'm in a room that's like 15 by 20, 15 wide by 20 feet long. And there's nothing in it, nothing. It's just me, this extra wide bed covered in a pure white blanket, lit like a computer screen, and there's nothing there. However, during this time, and this is something that I would always leave out when I tell people about this experience, because there's no way to explain it to people. So I would always pass this part. But there was 3 entities in the room, and they were female. Don't ask me how I know that, but they were definitely female. I could not see them, but I could feel them. I could sense them. And I could even feel when they moved around. I had 1 on my left and 2 on my right. And then on the wall opposite the foot of my bed, it was just a solid wall. And it was like if you ever do editing on a video for YouTube, where like you overlap and stitch one part of a video after you cut a section, and then you overlap it so it does a sweep into another scene. The wall just went and it opened up. And I'm looking straight down my body, and I'm looking at this wall where this hallway opened up. And this hallway was huge. I drive a van. This hallway was big enough to drive my van down it. But it was not a straight hallway that got, narrow from going deep and far away. It went in about 13 feet, and then it curved, a perfect curve. So the opening of the hallway, as I'm looking into the hallway and it curves around, I could not see past that curve. My eyesight could only see forward. And the further you tried to look into the tunnel, the darker it got. So the tunnel wasn't lit to the backside of the tunnel. But as it came towards my room, there was more light. It got brighter. And I laid there and I just looked at this tunnel and I'm like, this is not a hospital tunnel. And I wanted to add, Jeff, that when I woke and experienced this, I knew without a shadow of a doubt I was not in recovery and something went wrong. I knew immediately when my eyes were open, I was in the afterlife. And my first thought that came to my head was, uh-oh, something went wrong. Something went wrong during the surgery. But I did not panic. I did not feel fear. I was not scared because, to tell you the truth, and this is the God's honest truth, the second thought I had in my head after I realized something went wrong is I thought, they're down below. They're aware that something just happened to me and they're going to fix it. So I was waiting for them to bring me back. I actually had that thought. Both of those thoughts happened immediately. So I couldn't move. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't talk. I couldn't scream. I couldn't ask questions. I couldn't do anything. All I could do is just lay there as an observer and watch when this hallway opened up. It did not look like a tunnel. It looked like it looked like a high school hallway that actually had, like, I could see just before it started to curve, I could see windows, like there was rooms off of this hallway, but it was not a hallway you would see in a hospital because it was huge and the ceilings were really, really high and it was not normal. And I knew it wasn't. So I laid there just watching, wondering what's going to happen? What's going on? And then out of the hallway came a man walking swiftly. And this man was walking out the hallway off to the right side. So he was on the far side of the bend of the hallway, and he came walking out of this darkness and started walking swiftly down this hallway to this big white room where I laid in this bed all by myself, this big empty room. And it would not let me see this man from the waist up. It was blurred. There again, like editing, like if you wanted to blur out a scene and it wasn't pixelated, it was like a blurriness, and it would not let me see this man from the waist up, but it put emphasis on his legs. Like I had this strong, overwhelming feeling. Look at his legs, pay attention to his legs, notice his feet. And I had a feeling that came over me that said, that's Dad. That's my dad. And the reason why I think that happened is because when I was 7 years old, my dad had both of his legs amputated due to a forklift accident in a factory. He had gangrene and he laid out at the DAV hospital in Buffalo for 2 years. And I'd have to ride out with my mom to go see my dad for 2 years. And I don't have any memory of my dad walking at all. So I've got spotty memories of my childhood because I grew up in a very chaotic, abusive, dysfunctional house that had a lot of weird stuff going on in it. And it was just mayhem all the time. And so I don't have any memories of my dad walking. All I've ever known is my dad being a double amputee. When he and I would go fishing on Saturday when I was a kid, my dad would drive with hand controls, and other parents of my friends wouldn't let the kids go with us fishing because they're like, I don't want you riding with Kevin's dad because he drives with hand controls, and people really didn't trust it back in those days. So that's how I always knew my dad. Everywhere my dad and I went, I'd have to get out the wheelchair out of the car, load him in the wheelchair and push him around and get him set up and whatever. So when this man was walking towards me, I thought it was my dad because it was blurring out the top of him, but it was putting emphasis on his legs, and he was in a pure white suit, a beautiful suit. He looked very dapper, and he had dress shoes on, and I could even see the ends of the dress pants to the suit swishing as he walked swiftly to me. He wasn't running, he wasn't walking slow. He was walking like he was anxious to get to me, like he was happy to see me. But I cannot prove that it was my dad. But being able to put emphasis on his legs, I felt like that was him. And the suit almost took on like a canary yellow color because out from behind and around the suit, from behind him as he walked, and this light followed him as he walked, was a yellow goldish light. And so the suit being in this light took on that color. And it took me a while to realize that the suit was not yellow. It was white, but it was taking on the color of the light. But he was in a white suit, very well dressed. And that's when I knew this is not a doctor. It's not my surgeon. I had no idea where I was. I know I was in the afterlife, but where in the afterlife? You know, was I in the in-between world? I just knew that I was not in this reality on Earth. And so as I watched him walking swiftly to my bed, anticipating what was going to happen, what was he going to say? What was he going to do? What was going to happen next? And just as he got to my bed, just got there, bam, I was back in the room that I was in when I had cardiac arrest. And the strangest thing about this, Jeff, is that the bed that I woke up in the afterlife and saw, that wide, like ICU bed that had the white blanket and everything, is the identical bed I was in when I came back. Now, I saw the bed before I saw the bed being alive when they brought me back. That was mind blowing to me.